Well, good morning. And it's always really tough to have a session when the title we wanted to have was already given to Doug's session. How happy are the customers? Instead of that, we're going to have a conversation about engine programs. You just had an excellent presentation about the front end of the business, of the sales side of the business. But if we look at the other side, which is the cost of our industry, you spend about 15 to 30% of your DOCs on the engines one way or the other. So we thought it would be excellent to have a panel of professionals to discuss all the things you want to know about the engine programs. It was yesterday already discussed about engine programs with PPIs, but we want to find out, we have about 4,000 aircraft in Europe, what kind of programs are there and why you should be on a program or not. And I do that with a panel, and if you could introduce yourself as well as your company.
So Fabrice Roger, I'm SVP for EMEA and APAC for GSSI. So everyone knows GSSI. We're a provider of service maintenance, software, parts, and we do aircraft financing. So we currently have more than 6,000 aircraft on software and maintenance programs. And so the topic is the engine. So we'll focus on the engine, roughly 2,000 engines under program with GSSI. So we're working with the OEMs also on this, on that space.
So Sébastien Larue, I'm Director of Business Transformation and Aftermarket Services from Pratt & Whitney Canada. The only thing we do is engine, and we offer obviously our ESP program for this segment of the market. I'll be happy to share a little bit of lights on what we offer and all the challenges we're facing.
Daniela Nova, I'm with Honeywell MSP program, so we provide support to Honeywell engines, APUs, nacelle, and avionics components. And my role is a sales manager, and I cover the whole EMEA region, and I'm looking forward to provide you an update on Honeywell programs.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Andy Robinson. I'm Senior Vice President of Customers and Services for Business Aviation in Rolls-Royce. We have roughly 4,000 aircraft that we support, 3,000 customers, and we have 2,500 aircraft that are on our corporate care or corporate care enhanced programs, which is our aftermarket program for business aviation. I'm fortunate in that my team get to sell corporate care and my team has to deliver the services. So I'm held pretty accountable for what we sell. And so looking forward to the discussion.
So we have 3 OEMs programs. We've got JSSI with, I think, a much wider program because you also do the tip-to-tail kind of programs. If we talk about...
Tip-to-tail.
Sorry?
Tip-to-tail.
Tip-to-tail. Sorry. If we look at a percentage of your customer base that are using programs, I think it's probably easiest to go with the OEMs because you know how big your market is. So, Andy, as a percentage of the aircraft in the business aviation fleet, how much are on programs?
70%, and that includes the TAE, which is on the classic G4. The G4 came out before corporate care was established, and so we haven't got a big capture rate on the G4, but if I look at the newer aircraft, last year, 89% of G650s went on program. So we're roughly 75% of the newer aircraft, 75 to 80.
And are those aircraft from the point of sale on board with yourself, or do some of them arrive later so people buy into the program?
Yes, it's both. So many of them point of sale, but then when they go to sell the aircraft, one of the benefits of corporate care and corporate care enhanced is the residual value benefit. And so if you're on the program, you can sell the aircraft for more, but equally you can sell it quicker. And so what we find is while we may not capture at point of sale, we'll get them when they sell the aircraft on. So it's a mixture.
And does it tend to happen when people get like a big event and then they're scared into a program, or is there a particular point when it happens?
Normally when a new aircraft, if it hasn't been captured, and as I say, we're 75 to, and on some programs over 80% capture rate, but when they're not on the program and they go to sell the aircraft, many times they will put the aircraft on the program in order to sell it.
Yeah.
So we capture it at that point. Sometimes the older aircraft, we get them just when they come up to a shop visit, and we have to be somewhat creative there because sometimes the shop visits are more expensive than the aircraft itself. So we have a few programs that are slight tweaks for the older aircraft, which we call Corporate Care Flex. But yeah, we can offer programs all the way through the life cycle.
Okay. And Daniela, because with Honeywell you've got 3 different options, as I understand it. You've got it for the engines, the APUs, and the avionics. But it's the same question from a percentage basis. How many people are on program within the business aviation part of Honeywell?
So what we see as a trend on the new deliveries, like 90% of the customers subscribe immediately after delivery because they value the program, they know what service they are going to get, and they basically know it's essential to keep the aircraft flying long term. On the legacy platforms, our customers stick with the program. So even if the aircraft ages, we still see very high penetration on the TFE programs. And on some APUs engines, we are at 80% of the penetration. On the older platforms, we can be about 70. We still have a very loyal customers out there.
And Sebastian, for yourselves?
Yeah, I have some data actually that I took before I come here. It's quite amazing when you look at the Pratt & Whitney Canada portfolio. We have more than 68,000 engines in service today. We've been building engines since 1963 in Canada, of which it's about 40,000 plus airplanes that are powered by one of our engines. That means roughly 1 out of 5 airplanes is a Pratt Canada powered engine. And in terms of capture, I will echo my colleagues here. On the newer platform like the PW800 that powers the Falcon 6X, the G5, G6, and soon to be the G4, we're at 80+% that do subscribe to our ESP program. And on other platforms, even like if you're looking at the 300, this is 75% plus. That's on the Falcon 7X, 8X, or the 2000EX, 70% plus. And on the general aviation, where traditionally those private owners were not necessarily going after the program because the residual value was not really necessarily a key element in the value proposition. With our latest application, which is the PT6 Echo that is on the PC12 NGX, we have now over 65% of capture. In year, we have 70%. It's been a great success. We've launched this about 3 years ago because the value proposition is no longer just the added value or the residual value at time of sales, but it's all to do with the data. It's the data that we can capture from those engines. We have sensors to the yin-yang, and that we can capture and have algorithm and engineers that are looking at those data and then can now start to think about proactive services, obviously, but also getting into the predictive maintenance and scheduling. Because I think one of the challenges that we're going to hear and some of the complaint that long turnaround time, the way to address this in the future is all about planning. And being on a data, on a plan with the OEMs is probably going to be the way to address the future. And I think there was a kind of a polemic message back in Miami. I still think that customers should be on a program.
You took away a number of my questions already in one go, which is very efficient. But let's move first on to the JSI offering, because for these guys it's fairly straightforward. There's X amount of engines, etc., and you have a market share. You're in a unique position. You offer it throughout the fleet. So what is your measurement and what kind of market do you have? What kind of market share in a percentage?
So I think, again, like following COVID, I think the aviation industry understood the interest of being on a program, right? With the supply chain constraint, with all the issues. So that's why they're showing those amazing numbers in terms of adoption of programs. So the ones that are not going with the OEMs will likely go with JSSI or decide to self-reserve. So we do like new aircraft deliveries. We do like pre-owned also. We have an offer which is a bit unique, which is called Pro Rata, where you can enter a program while the aircraft has already flown without a program. And yes, I mean, we're working with the OEMs, we're working with the main, engine shops. So at the end, yes, we're working together, like trying to find solutions. There's been obviously, in some of the questions there, some supply chain issues. There's some delays also on the maintenance on the engines. Sometimes lack of loaners on some of the platform. So what we do is we have a different approach. We're purchasing aircraft, we're purchasing engine to be able to service our customers. We have close relationship with the OEMs, because when there's a problem with a customer, I mean, at the end, it's being GSSI or on a program with the OEM. We just need to find a solution. So we have very constructive discussions. I know we discussed on the 7X, for example, platform on several customers to try to find a solution. We try to be creative. We have a parts department also. We have a parts platform that is called like Parts Hub that allows our customer to try to find parts. And we use it also to purchase parts in advance to make sure we don't, we can service our customers and we don't fall in situations where...
So you could have a mix and match whereby you have, let's say, a Rolls-Royce engine, an APU from Honeywell, and yourself doing the two-tail?
Totally.
That's an option?
We're independent and we work with all the OEMs, so yes.
Okay, so it depends on what the customer comes with to you to say, okay, we'll make the offering. How do you look at the landscape? There's a number of operators that we speak to, and at the moment it's a really tough market out there. Spare parts, labor, delays, etc., etc. I'll start with you, Daniela. How is the market for you if you look at it? Because it's great if sales is doing an excellent job, but from a fulfillment perspective, do you have any major hiccups at the moment?
So I believe Honeywell is facing the same issues as any other OEM in this room. So we have seen issues with sourcing raw materials. We have seen issues on the supply chain. We are doing everything we can to support our MSP customers. We have invested huge money into our engine rental bank in 2024, and we are continuing the trend in 2025. Obviously, having the rental engines is number one for us. On the other hand, it doesn't solve the turnaround time. So we are doing everything we can with our suppliers to make sure they have all the skilled labor. We partner with them. We even put people at their sites to ensure they can fulfill the demand that we have. And as everyone said here, planning is the key these days. So obviously, our engine trend monitoring is something that helps us a lot at these challenging days. So getting the data from the engine in time to see when the engine will need to come off is a huge, huge benefit that OEM can provide. We are now introducing a new device for the HTF engines that will basically use much more of the engine data that we can get from the engine, and it will be provided for all the MSP customers free of charge. We are now in the latest phase of the EMEA STC approvals. For Embraer, we have the STCs for Challengers, so all our MSP customers will get the device to ensure that they can plan for the maintenance and we can address the issues as soon as they arise, and we do not wait for the field arising AOGs. So planning is an absolute necessary at this time.
So when we had the conversation beforehand, Andy, about this particular thing, I think you were like the chirpy one in the room, because from a supply perspective, etc., how are things on your side and resources, etc.?
Yeah, I think in production in the OE world, where you have to use new material, that's where it's been more challenging, particularly for us since COVID. We've introduced the Pearl 15, the Pearl 700, and the Pearl 10X. So there's a big ramp up for us in the new production space, and so that brings with it challenges. But in the aftermarket, what we sell with corporate care and corporate care enhanced is aircraft availability, right? And to protect the brand, we cannot have a Rolls-Royce powered aircraft AOG for the want of a spare part or the want of lease engines. So we invest significantly in both. We added 12 BR725s last year to the program, so we have over 20 engines, and we haven't even had shop visits yet. But you have to put that investment in because the production line is closing down on the BR725, so you have to be ready for when that comes. So we've invested significantly for our stores around the world. We use data, obviously, forecasting is key. The older engines, which are typically hard time, are much easier to forecast. We know the tail is going to come in every 10 years, for example. But on the newer engines, which are on condition, it's very important that we have the data to understand the health of the engine, and we can predict and forecast when that engine will come off. So forecasting is key. I think we're all saying the same thing, and we use various digital tools to predict what the inventory levels need to be, and we measure weekly what our inventory levels are to ensure that we always have parts and lease engines available.
Yeah. So Sebastian, same question to you. I mean, there's been issues on a number of engines and a number of spare parts, but how is it affecting your, especially after COVID, the programs and the turnarounds?
I would say I would echo what Stefan said yesterday from Embraer. Basically, I think we have to look now at the supply chain with radical fundamental change. The just-in-time period is gone. I think even the thinking of I'm going to walk in and expect in 5 weeks to have my engine back, this is gone as well. We are fighting with resources, whether it's raw material, labor, with other industries that are much bigger than us. I wouldn't say that we are a niche, but we are in a low volumes, highly sophisticated, and highly regulated industry. It's difficult to qualify a supplier. It takes time, takes years. And add on top of that, in the case of Pratt, we have over 1,000 of spare engine out there. But we have to support well over 150 different engine types. So sometimes it is difficult. From time to time, you will have those platforms that only have like a couple of engines left in operation. Yesterday, I saw a picture of an ADAC, 2 Dornier 328 jet. These are the 306B. There's only 22 airplanes left in operation in the world. We still need to support them. So it's a complex world to live in. There's no one silver bullet to address all the issues, but it's all about, again, I think my colleagues here will echo, it's about planning.
Yeah. So Fabrice, when I look at you guys, especially in the current market, I sometimes don't envy you because you need to go to the OEMs to get those spares, to get the data. And as operators, that's, I'm generalizing here, but that's a huge challenge. Get the spares, get the things, etc. How do you mitigate that risk? Because you're nimble and you have different things. You buy the spare parts, so you have access to it. But how do you perceive the issues of getting spare parts, etc., etc.?
When they're available, usually we can access them. I mean, there's again, we're collaborating well with the OEMs. We're one of the biggest customer of the OEMs at the end of the day. So, and back to what Daniela and Sebastian were mentioning. So, and Andy too. Like I think the key is the planning. The ability to plan properly the upcoming maintenance events. So what we have to provide an answer to that is our software, maintenance tracking software called Traxel, which is a way of for us also to have visibility on the forecast, on the parts that we're going to need, optimize this planning, and the traceability of the inventory, what's available. I mean, this is something we use, but the reality is we can work either with the OEMs or with other suppliers. So we have plenty of examples where we've been able to navigate and find solutions for our customers. The first communication will be directly with the OEMs. If it's not available with the OEMs, we will try to source it through a different way. And I think that's one of the strengths also of JSSI, is because we can, we're working with all the industry. So that's the way we do it. And one of the key things also of JSSI is, and these are actually the rock stars of our organization, is all the tech advisors that we have. So we have 100 tech advisors that are following the 3,000 aircraft that I was mentioning that are on programs with JSSI. And those people are the ones that would be working with the flight departments of our customers to planify, prepare all the maintenance events. So we want to be as close as possible to our customer and at the end become kind of an extension of their flight department. So this is what we give. We bring this technology, obviously the software, but at the end of the day, it's also the service that is delivered by our tech advisor on a day-to-day basis. So we're very proud of the service they deliver.
Okay, so if we think about, are there any particular components that you really say, look, this is an issue? I mean, we all know it's not with the engine programs, it's like the windows, there's a big issue. In your field, what is the biggest issue you're facing? If you can say, look, if the biggest risk we run is on X, Y, or Z, and any particular thing you would like to have more of?
Well, you can never have too many lease engines, to be honest. But I would say, again, in production, there are some sticky parts, right? Yeah. We get that. But in the aftermarket, in the shop, one of the benefits for Rolls-Royce is we have a standalone business aviation organization, and we have our own shops. So we have 2 shops, and they're connected, and the engineers, we've got 70 or 80 engineers in Canada. They're part of our bigger engineering team. So if we see parts that are short, we'll develop repairs. We do a number of things. One of the things you can do is, if there's a bolt missing, you can buy the next higher assembly and fit the bigger part. So there's always options. There's more options in the aftermarket space. And we also buy back engines and return them to parts as well. So that's another way we support the supply chain. And that's particularly useful to do with the older engine types where the supply chain is particularly challenging. So leased engine, but if you anything else particularly you think of? For us, there's no one part that we desperately need, and we've got lease engines too. So I'm joking when I say that. I do believe you can never have too many, but that's because I'm in services. But there is no one part that we're struggling for right now. Daniela, for you as well, what would you like? What's your shopping list?
So yeah, it's always with the raw materials and the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. We have seen some challenging on the HPT blades. So the good news is that we see the supply chain recovery coming in Q2 on those parts. So hopefully the future is much brighter than what we have seen in the past. We as well are looking at the used engine market. We are sourcing the parts for the engines back from the market to part them out and basically resupply them into the network. We are closely working with our channel partners in the region of stock parts for us as well to ensure we do not only utilize our parts inventory, but we work with all our partners to ensure we basically supply the parts globally.
So Sebastian, what's on your wish list?
And I would approach the question slightly differently. I think it's not necessarily a part, because with the vast portfolio that we have, I mean, there's probably one case and it's fixed the next day. I think what keeps us awake or concerned is obviously the raw material. For example, titanium. 40% is coming from China, 40% is coming from Russia. The geopolitical environment that we're in, very VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. You just don't know. So that's why we have to predict. We also have a large fleet of pool. We're buying back some assets. We have shops, MRO shops that will refurbish them. That's how we can find solutions. But the raw material and the geopolitical environment that we're in, this is the challenge that we're going to face for a few years.
Same question to you, Fabrice.
We don't produce, right? So we don't have the issue of the raw material, but what we do is we buy aircraft for tear down. That was mentioned yesterday on one of the panel. We bought like 2 Phenom 300 last year, a Sovereign. And we keep looking for opportunities to buy platforms that will support our program. So, that's yeah.
Okay. Hey, just you're all parts, and I'm not talking to OEMs now, part of larger corporates, and there's you've got big airlines who are screaming for certain parts, and then there's business aviation there in this corner, and we tend to be forgotten from a regulatory perspective, for all different reasons. How does it work? Because with resource allocation within your organization? You mentioned, it's just clearly defined, you're a separate division within it. How does it work? Because there's sometimes an overlap. Is there a fight internally?
So, as I say, we've got a standalone business aviation organization, but we have a shared supply chain procurement. So we do have to go into battle with our large engine brothers and sisters. But for the most part, our parts are very much more unique, and the volume is much smaller than it is for in the airline world. So you can fix ours without impacting their issues too much. So it's a constant battle to get priority, but for the most part, we're doing pretty well.
Yeah. Daniela?
So what we are seeing right now on the supply chain is not only an issue with the raw materials and getting priority over others, but what we as well see as a large issue of the industry is the skilled labor availability. So what we are doing right now is partnering with universities globally to ensure we develop the talents and we place people with our suppliers. We are as well looking at other ways how to improve the technology we are using. We are looking into 3D printing and all other options that are there available to support our customers and keep the engines flying, especially on the older platforms. Being on the program and having access to our inventory can be the only thing that keeps the aircraft in the air. So we are there to support our customers throughout the whole lifetime of that aircraft.
Sebastian, please.
Well, the way it's structured at Pratt essentially is that you have Pratt military engine, Pratt commercial engine, which are in Hartford, and then Pratt Canada. I would say that we're definitely not the poor child. We're actually the crown of the jewel of the crown. There's not much competition between the three business units when it comes to resources. As a matter of fact, we will collaborate where there is, but there's not much commonality. I mean, we're very operating independently, apart from the PW800 core that is similar to the GTF. There's not much overlap, so we're operating in our own world, and I don't think they suck up some of our resources or parts or anything that we would sacrifice just for the sea.
Well, Fabrice, for you the question will be slightly different because
exactly. Well, we don't have any commercial, so we just focus on jets and helicopters.
Yeah. So but for you, if we look at shortages and resources, etc., you need to buy second-hand aircraft. Now we've seen some numbers already. It's kind of a bit more stabilized, but have the equation changed when the market values were going up so much, and you've committed yourself on looking after engines, and so the cost of the refurbishment goes up. You've committed to a certain amount, but then if you want to tear down, that aircraft is also gone up in value. How did you mitigate these things?
That's a very good question, Robert. How do we mitigate? We don't really, well, we have it's the same, we have a program, we factor like all those increases and all those prices in the programs that we're offering to our customers. So again, most of the time we go directly to the OEM. The first source of parts will be the OEM. So that's the way we operate. But then if there's no option with the OEM, we will be very to keep the aircraft flying, which is the reason for JSSI to be here also. We just get paid. If you think about, JSSI, we get paid when the aircraft are flying. So we want to make sure you're flying as much as possible, and we will provide an alternative, going again on the market, tearing down an aircraft. Again, that's a very limited portion of the things we do. Most of the time, we will work with with the OEMs.
So then. I like what Oliver Havenode was saying about, that we're becoming as more and more data-driven. Specifically for the OEMs, you're sitting on a huge pot of data. What are you doing? And you already alluded a little bit to it. In what ways are you using AI or something similar already to use that, and how does it translate to the on-wing time? Do you have any ideas and thoughts of where you are and how things are changing?
Yeah, no, the big debate will be, is this AI or machine learning? So I will left that debate towards the expert on that matter. But one thing that I can say is that we had launched, I would say 2 years ago, an initiative called AI, which is basically looking at what's the best decision to do between repair or replace a parts, and taking into account all the data set that we have. So we've made some improvement in order to address cost issue, because it's very expensive, those events. So that's where we're leveraging it. On the other hand, in terms of maintaining the airplanes in the air, on wing, the engine, this is where all the proactive information that we're getting, the data from those newer platform, helps us out to better support and ensure that it's safe to fly the airplanes. We're getting a lot of data. Yeah. And it's hundreds of parameters. It's way more than what even you would have in the EHM from CAM, for example. Yeah. That's the basic trending. What we get is our IP, it's our knowledge, it's like the crème de la crème of mechanical engineering that are looking at those data, and they can make the call and see things happen before they happen. I think that's what is, I would believe, very unique to our industry.
Just jumping on that, do you also share that with other parties? You have all the data, but I mean JSSI and MROs and how much of all that data is passed on to also to the people who create the data, EA, the operators?
You have to understand that this is really our IP. This is our design. This is how it works. Yeah. So obviously it's very close by. We don't share that, and I don't expect my colleagues here to share as well. This is the recipe that managed to get to build those very reliable engines.
Is that true, Daniela?
It's true. So basically it's Honeywell proprietary data. So once you get on the new type of the trend monitoring on the ensemble, you really need to be on MSP to get that device. That's the first thing. The other thing is it's only Honeywell that can read the data. We do not share it further. You get part of the data pushed into CAMP, right? But it's always our OEM technical experts and our expertise that's behind the analytics and the algorithms. And as Honeywell proprietary, we do not share that further. And it leads me to your first question on using of AI on our analytics. So as this data is really restricted, there's a very limited opportunity to use AI for that kind of data because it's highly technical, it's export restricted, controlled. So we do look into using AI into the planning part of the maintenance, but not really for the engine monitoring and the technical side of the analysis that we use.
So, Andy, at Rolls-Royce, is AI a buzzword, or is it something you're actually doing? Where are you at?
No, we do. We use it, particularly with EHM.
Yeah.
We look for trends. We've actually developed a tool we call Engine Network. It's a bit like Facebook for an engine. And it takes all the data feeds that we have, whether it be new production, from our own availability center, from our service center network, from CAMP, and from EHM, and on the newer engines we get 10,000 data points on EHM. So it's a ton of data comes together and it tells a story for an engine. And with that we can do what we call PELM, and Rolls-Royce are really good with acronyms. We've actually got an acronym for an acronym, believe it or not, TEI. But PELM is Proactive Engine Life Management, and so we look at the engines to see an engine can, on average it will stay on wing for 10,000 hours, but some engines will stay on wing for 8 and some will do 12 or more. The trick is to pick those engines, right? So don't bring off a 12,000 hour capable engine at 8,000, let it run to 12. And for that we use Proactive Engine Life Management, and that takes all the data, the environment, the temperatures, looks at compressor efficiency, compares the compressor to the rest of the fleet so we know which one's the most tired, and that's the one that we will then target to pull off. And that's part of the service that we provide. That's and also part of the forecasting and plan that goes into our supply chain demand.
So Fabrice, it's excellent, it's IP, etc., etc. But you also, I guess, to be able to do what you do, you need access to data. So how do you get as much data and obviously keep the engines on the wing for 12,000 hours?
So the thing about the data of JSSI is we collect it from the different platforms. So
Right.
our data is on multi-models, multi-aircraft. So that's also very valuable data to the industry. So either they would subscribe directly to the OEM trend monitoring, or there's other providers of engine trend monitoring also that we can use. Yeah, I mean it's proprietary information, but it's also there's also like providers that are able to capture some of those parameters of the engine. So.
Perfect. Okay. With that, I think I've seen some questions going up. Are you optimistic about predictive maintenance using AOGs? I think everybody's really optimistic about it. Would it be possible to get them on the screen here? And we don't. It's a red screen here. So. Oh, there we go. David is also semi-Dutch like myself, so we tend to be very direct, but also very honest. And I like the questions. No parts, no rentals, no service available. Why do we continue to pay program? It's always the customers taking the hit. It's almost more like a statement than a question. Is that something? Is the customer taking the hit or not? How do you perceive your own program? It's a very difficult question to answer. But
well, I'm hoping that David's not pointing that one at me, because we do have parts and we do have rentals, and we haven't had an AOG for parts or lease engines for as long as I can remember. So I think it does pay to be on a program. That program for us is very much focused on aircraft availability, and as we said before, we get paid when the aircraft flies. So I never want to see any Rolls-Royce powered aircraft on the ground for the lack of a part or a lease engine, and so far, touch wood.
Yeah.
We've been lucky.
Anybody else would like to answer that question?
So for Honeywell, we prioritize the rental engine based on the MSP subscription. So our MSP customers absolutely get priority with rentals. Unfortunately, we have seen cases in the past where the customer had to wait for the rental to be available. However, being on the program really gets you on the top of the line, and we make sure you get the support when it's needed.
I was going to say, before COVID time, I think we had a recipe with our LeaseCo pool that was able to support all of our customers. Paradigm have changed on us. I mean, the demand surge, the utilization surge, it changed all the equation. So we do have parts, we do have some engine in the LeaseCo pool. From time to time, we're struggling. We admit that. We're trying to figure out what's the best solution for our customers. But the paradigms have changed, and this is why planning is going to be more and more important.
Well, when there's no engine available, I mean, what we do at JSSI, obviously, we're trying to find solutions. So we obviously we will talk to our peers with the OEMs. Then we'll try to find other option. I mentioned like purchasing aircraft. We also, we work with some large fleets. We're maintaining some large fleet of aircraft. So we would go to them also and maybe offer like charter, so that our customers are not impacted as much. I mean, we're just trying to do as much as we can. We have a mechanism that is called supplemental lift, which will compensate a little bit, the absence of an engine. Again, we're a customer-centric organization, so we're trying to find solutions. We don't build those engines, so unfortunately we have to rely on the production of those engines. But we're ready to go the extra mile to try to find a solution. So we've booked several blocks of hours for some customers that were without aircraft for a while, and this is something we're totally keen to look at.
Good. Well, time is almost.
Just answer to this question right now, so because so like 12 months. Please.
Okay. Yeah. I just
plan ahead.
This last question I think is a nice final question. So we'll just do a quick round. If you all can give the number, you've given the answer. 12 months.
I would say 12 months, definitely. The sooner the better. Again, that's part of the service we deliver also, which is anticipating and working with our technical advisors. So 12 months is the right timeline just to prepare a main maintenance event.
Sebastian, how many months?
It's at least a year. Get intimate with the OEMs, get closer to them. They will help you out to find solution.
So same here, and yeah, our engine rental bank plans 6 months ahead. The sooner you come, the better. So we know when your input is due, and yeah, I can see the question came from Koen. So Standard Aero works closely with us to ensure that the rentals are well planned for the customers, for the CZI inputs, and planning is the key.
And last for you, Wendy.
Yeah, definitely 12 months out of there. We reach out 12 months, if not earlier, to start planning, and we know how many shop visits we're going to have this year and next year and so forth. So yeah, definitely at least 12 months.
Excellent. Well, hopefully Koen can use that and take that information home. May I thank you all. After this, we have coffee outside where you can meet the panelists probably as well if you have specific questions. But first of all, can we give a hand and thank you to the panel?
Thank you, Robert.